Welcome Year 11 to the night before news presentation for the exam for the BTEC business course on Wednesday the 7th of May. During this presentation I will be going through the June 2024 paper that we started in class and finishing that. The first thing that I want to point out is the timing of the exam. As you can see from the circled information, the exam is 2 hours and it's got a total marks of 60. That works out as 120 minutes for 60 marks, which equals 2 minutes a mark. The reason I'm pointing this out is because you have more time than you realise, and in some ways you need to use that time to double check your answer. Each exam will come with a case study. Here's an example of the case study for June 2024. As you can see, there's some information on there. The information is important for you to understand because it can help you to answer the question and show your application skills. For example, if you look at the highlighted section on the first paragraph, that is telling you about the company's products and the range of products. So it tells you that they supply live music packages with a variety of musical styles suitable for the event. What they also do is tell you the target market, because it tells you it's for people who are having weddings, parties, club nights and business events. That would be the target market. That's quite useful information for when you're answering some of the questions. If we look further down, you can also see the target market is explained a little bit further by saying it's not just in this country but in Europe as well. And there's a little bit more about the different types of people or products they provide. Again, there's a variety of products which should help questions later. It tells us it's a sole trader. You can use the advantages and disadvantages of a sole trader in some of the questions that you need to discuss with. And that the last section that's underlined says increase the success. The reason that is that's underlined is because that tells you the aims and objectives of the business. Again, that could be very useful information when you come to answer some questions. So in the exam on Wednesday, when you're having a look at the case study, try and pick out those few things. The first type of question that we've got in front of us is completing one of the financial documents. We've had plenty of practice in this in class, and you've also got a booklet which you could refer to. The first mark is available for just writing the receipt number. Now, when you're writing the receipt number, what you have to understand, it will always be one up from the last receipt number. So you need to check this very carefully when looking at the question. It's then a case of just simple arithmetic. So if we move down to the second mark, we're looking at trying to work out the subtotal. Now the subtotal is adding up all the products values, and therefore if we add those two together, you should get an answer of 2014.90. A common mistake that students make is they treat the numbers as separately. So some students will add up 95 and 95 and then get the answer from there. But you must make sure that the answer is in pounds and pence, so you're adding it all together. £414.95, £1,599.95. From there, we add the VAT. There are various different ways to calculate VAT and percentages, but my common way is to just divide the percentage by 100, times it by the figure that you're looking at, and therefore you get the answer of £402.98. Now, because it's VAT, it gets added on. In some of the questions, they may be discounts, in which case the percentage is taken off. But because it's VAT, it's added on. So if we add the two numbers together, you get an answer of £2,417.88. That's how to get your 4 marks on a question like this. Please be aware though that there is an ECF. So if you get something slightly wrong, but you show the right method, you will still get marks for it. Question 1B represents the first of the written exam answers. When answering written questions, it is important to identify the command word, and that will tell you exactly what you have to do for each question. In this case, in question 1B, the command word is name, and it's 1 mark. Therefore, it is just a knowledge question. Therefore, one word answers are enough to get the mark. In this case, it's to do with fixed assets. And if you don't know what a fixed asset is, it's there on the screen. It's something of value that a business uses more than once to make money. Because there is no context to this, you just have to give some examples. There are plenty of examples that exist in terms of equipment, machinery, buildings, furniture, vehicles and land. Again, because it is only a one-word answer, one of those words as machinery would be enough to get you the 1 mark. For question 1C, again it's a named question, no need for any explanation, but this time it's 2 things that you have to identify, which is why it's only worth 2 marks. That's 1 mark each. There are many different pricing strategies that we have learned in class. They are there on the screen: penetration, skimming, competitive, cost plus, markup and premium. Any 2 of these 5 would suffice to get you the 2 marks. One final question on this page gives us the give one action. Again, the term give means one thing, no explanation necessary. Just say the one action that would create a positive public opinion, which is anything to do with PR. So anything that makes your business look good. For me, I think in being environmentally friendly is the most obvious answer, which is what I would have put down. However, as you can see from the mark scheme, there are 3 others that you could put down as an answer for creating positive public opinion. You will see these 2 questions are a similar command word in give. Therefore, there's no explanation needed. Pause the video, give it a go, and then I will show you the answer. Okay, so now given the 2 answers, we know that this question is about sources of finance. The first question is 2 examples of internal personal source of finance. Now, the words internal personal are very important to this question because they will only be accepted as these answers: savings, credit cards or friends and family. Any 2 of those 3 would be enough to get the 2 marks. However, there is one thing that I would like to point out. These are only acceptable responses. So in all the other questions, any other appropriate response would be credited. But for these ones, because it's internal personal source, then only those are internal personal sources. Therefore, the only ones that would get the marks. But as you can see, misspellings are okay as long as the examiner can make out the word. It's the same thing for 2B, but this time instead of internal personal sources of finance, this time they're external long-term source of finance. Again, there are 3 that you could use in mortgage, share capital and taking on partner. So any one of those would work. But again, these are the only acceptable responses for this type of question. You could write loan as long as you wrote long-term loan. If you don't write long-term loan, then it won't get the mark. So these are for external long-term sources of finance. The next question is an interesting one because lots of students here make the same mistake. And it's not to do with the knowledge of what needs to be picked out, but more so of not reading the question properly. So this is now identify. Again, it's identifying 2 items, which means 1 word answers So it shouldn't take you too long to write that. No need for any kind of explanation. However, the most common mistake in this type of question comes from students not picking the answers from the list that's given. So they may get two things that might be on a balance sheet, but because they're not in the list at the top, they will not get the 2 marks. So for the list above, the 2 things that appear on a balance sheet are the current liabilities and the equity. So please make sure you read the question, and if it says to use the answers from one source, then use the answers from one source. Okay, we move on to now a command word that's explain. Now the explain command word means you need a connective. Now that connective will lead to a linked argument for why you are making that point. This question carries 4 marks, but that's because it's explaining 2 disadvantages. Had it been 1 disadvantage, it would be 2 marks and not 4. So the 4 marks means you get 1 point for a disadvantage and then 1 point for the connective with the linked development, but it would have to be for 2 separate disadvantages. So answering this question, it would mean that you would have 1 point for the disadvantage of a sales promotion, and then you'd have the 1 point for explaining why it's a disadvantage, i.e. your linked justification. So you should know from the promotion booklet that I've given you that the disadvantages of sales promotion are those. The revenue decreases, profit decreases, may not pay the higher price in the future, brand image may be damaged because of low prices. You would need to pick 2 of those and say why they are disadvantages. So it looks like this. Revenue may decrease. There's your 1 mark for the disadvantage of sales promotion because customers are paying less for the promotional items. That would be your 2 marks. To get the third and fourth mark, you would then have to pick another disadvantage and explain it with a linked justification. You can see from there that there are various examples of how to get the 4 marks. This is another filling in a financial document. We have covered this earlier in the presentation, so just pause the video and give it a go. Okay, so here are the answers. So your first answer will be having to work out your total price of each product. So we know to do that, we need to do the unit price times the number of sessions purchased. Therefore, £799.95 times 8 gives us £6,399.60. Notice again that the pounds and the pence are in separate columns. You then do the same for the 3-piece band. So you get that answer. And then we move down to the subtotal. The subtotal would be £11,199.40 because we've added the 2 above. Now we have to work out the discount. Again, the discount is 5% of the subtotal. So 5% of the subtotal is £559.97. The difference here between this one and the previous one in question 1, in question 1 it was VAT, so we got added on. This time round it's a discount, so that the money then needs to come off. Therefore, your total to pay is £10,639.43. That's your answer. However, as per the other one, you do get an ECF. So if you've got the subtotal wrong, you can still get an error carried forward if you get the discount and the total put to pay right. So it goes that far. This question here again is about explaining two advantages. It's a very similar one to sales promotion, but this time we are talking about looking at advantages of building a strong brand. Pause the video, have a go, and then I'll show you the mark scheme. Okay, here's the mark scheme that we know that strong brands create more revenue, or sales may increase, or it might attract new people or more customers. With good brand comes good repeat sales. It gives you a competitive advantage if you've got a strong brand because people trust you, like Apple have got a very strong brand, so people trust them. And because they trust it, they can charge higher prices. So they're all advantages of having a strong brand. You'd only have to write about two of them. Again, you only need one advantage and a link justification with a connective, and you would get the 2 marks. Okay, another calculation question here. Again, you need to know the formula of gross profit, which we should know as revenue minus cost of sales. But you now have to apply a 3% discount. Again, there are very simple ways, or several different ways, I should say, of how to calculate percentage discounts. You do it the way you feel most comfortable, but you should get an answer of £1,254.50. Now, only correct answers, so there is no ECF in this one. It's a correct answer only. If you look at method 1, you're looking at method 1 in terms of taking 3% off 100, so times in the cost of sales by 0.97, which gives you the answer of £145.50. You then do 1,400 minus £145.50, gives you an answer of £1,254.50. The second method is to find 3% of the cost of sales, which would be 3 divided by 100 times your cost of sales. It's the same answer, and therefore you take it off and get the same answer. And there's a third way that you can work it out as well. As I've said, as long as you are showing some kind of work, and it doesn't matter which method you use, you will still get the marks. This is a very popular question in all the exams and comes up on a regular basis. And it can be with cash flows, it could be with fixed costs or variable costs or anything like that. This is a very popular question. Now, as you can see, there's a cash flow with missing gaps. Okay, so question 1, starting from the left, or answer 1, requires you to work out the opening balance for February. Now, we don't know the opening balance because it hasn't given it to us. Therefore, we need to try and work it out. So your first step is to identify which formula with cash flows uses opening balance. Well, we know that as closing balance, because your closing balance is opening balance plus net cash flow. Now in February, we can see that the figures for your closing balance is minus 160. We are trying to find out the opening balance. We know the net cash flow is 840, and now it becomes a simple case of algebra and rearranging the formula. So we can rearrange that formula to get the question mark on its own, so it looks like that. Now your 840 now becomes a minus because it's gone the other side of the equal sign. Therefore, minus 160 minus 840 gives you an answer of minus 1,000. Therefore, your opening balance has got to be minus 1,000. Now you do exactly the same thing for the total outflows. We don't know the total outflows, but we know the net cash flow of 1,420, and we know the total inflows of 7,100. We should also know that the formula is net cash flow equals total inflows minus total outflows. Again, it's a case of substitution and rearranging. So we've got those figures. The net cash flow is 1,420. Our total inflows are 7,100 minus is the figure that we're trying to find out. Rearrange the formula again to get the question mark on its own. Therefore, you get an answer of 5,680. Therefore, your total outflows are 5,680. Again, now we're asked to find the total inflows. Now, the total inflows will be exactly the same way as the previous gap. So you look at the formula, you do the same for the total inflows. We know that's the formula. We substitute, get the question mark on its own, work it out, so you get the answer 10,420. And that's how you get your 3 marks. So we're back now down to explain questions, and this is exactly the same as the previous question, but this time you're looking at 2 disadvantages for an enterprise of using hire purchase as a source of finance. Pause the video, give it a go, then I'll show you the answers. Okay, here comes the mark scheme. Correct your answer, and if you don't know the disadvantages, please make sure that you know them from there. Okay, we're now coming on to a different kind of question with a different command word. This requires a lot of contextualization, which means using the case study. Now you can see that the case study is telling us that they're going to double the marketing budget. Now we know that the marketing budget is an expense budget, so they are looking to spend more money. We can also see from the question that we need to know what the impacts of spending more money on the marketing budget is for Halo Sounds. And the fact that it says discuss and the marketing budget means that you have to give both positive and financial and negative impacts. Now, if you look at the exam board where it says with the mark scheme, candidates might refer to some or all of the following in their responses, which I will show in a minute, but should be rewarded for other pertinent contextualized answers, which means if you have written something that's not in the mark scheme, but is relevant to this case study, then you're still going to be rewarded for it. But answers will only be accepted if linked to or qualified with information from the context of the question. So you have to use the information from question 5. So here are the potential, the positive financial impacts of the doubling the marketing budget. Firstly, you can see from there an answer about positive financial impacts. I'm going to break it down for you so you can see how to get the marks. This is exactly as we went through the class in the class with a different question on Thursday. So, first of all, we make the point. So the point is that the positive impact will be the total monthly sales revenue in the UK. That's the point. What then happens is the answer then contextualizes it, because it talks about the figures in the table. So it tells us how the monthly sales will go up and how much by. So in the previous 12 months, they were forecasted at 6,250, but the actual from last year was 5,500, a difference of £750 per month. So that's the average. So that's the context. The link justification that's required then comes after the connective of this means. So the point You've impacted on monthly sales by making it go up. You can see that from the figures from the table. What does it mean for Halo? Well, it means that they can spend more money, or customers are forecasted to spend more money given the marketing budget. So that's one possible angle that you could have gone by. The reason I'm doing it this way is to make you aware that you must show knowledge from the case study. The second point on the mark scheme is again to do with the positive financial impacts. Again, you can see exactly the same. The point being the annual sales this time, not just the monthly sales, but the annual sales are looking to go up as well. Now they budgeted for a certain amount, but now the forecast shows an increase. And again, within green, you can see that they've used the figures from the case study to show that. Again, we've got the connective, this additional revenue, and why it's a positive impact. Because the money generated from the additional revenue could be spent elsewhere. The third bullet point we can see again is exactly the same way. Okay, increase in predicted sales. We can see that the context is there. They're using the data from the information, and they've done other calculations using the information from figure 5. They have a connective, this will mean that, which gives them the halo, which gives them the impact on what it would mean. So that will be the positive impacts. You do the negative financial impacts in exactly the same way. Exactly the same way, where you would make the point, which is in yellow, you'd contextualize it, which is green, the connectives are in purple, and the link justification in red. Now I've done the positive financial impacts, you give the negative impacts a go. So here are the negative impacts. Again, it's the same thing. You need to show the answers. You need to show the point or what the impact is, the negative impact. You need to show some kind of contextualization, i.e. what information are you using from figure 5. And then you also look at the link justification with a connective. Here is the mark scheme. How did you do? Now this question isn't in the paper, which means it wasn't asked about in the last cycle. I've just added in this so I can show you and give you a little bit of revision of how to do a break-even chart, because it is still quite a popular question that comes up. As you can see, there are 4 marks and it's about drawing and labeling the break-even chart. And you have to show the fixed cost line, the total cost line, total revenue line, and also label the break-even using the figures from figure 2. The grid or the axes have already been drawn out for you, so you don't have to worry about that. It's just a matter of now plotting the points. When I start with a break-even chart, I will always start with the fixed costs because it's always easy. So if we look at the fixed cost, we know they're all the same. They do not change with output. So we know our first point is 0, 150. Therefore, we plot the point at 0, 150 where the blue cross is. We then go down the route. We look at the maximum amount, which is 200. Again, it's 150. Therefore, we plot the point. And because we know it's a straight line, all we need to do is join the dots. Therefore, you get your fixed costs. Now, it doesn't matter in what order you do this, but it is just simply following the procedure of plot the points and join the dots. Join the dots before you start the next line. Otherwise, you could get confused. So I'm now going to go with the total cost line, which I will do in red. we know that the total cost line should always start the same place as the fixed cost line. So we know that the fixed cost line is 0 and 150. So our total cost, if we don't produce and sell any products, means we still have to pay £150. We can then look at the final two figures again, which the number of peanut butter jars is 200, the total cost of 350. We plot the point with an X, straight line from one to the other, label it total costs. It will be exactly the same for the revenue. We know that the revenue is 0, 0, because if we don't sell anything, we don't make any money. Therefore, we plot the point at 0, 0. What we then do is plot the last point again, 200 and 500 pounds, plotted the point, join the two dots, and all of a sudden where your total revenue, total cost line crosses is your break-even point. Again, 4 marks. If you know how to draw graphs, will get you the marks. Again, another question that was not in that paper is one about the profit and loss account. We haven't covered that in this revision program, so I'm just going to cover it now with a different question from a different exam cycle. So again, we've got gaps. You've got most of the information there. All you need to make sure is you know are the formulas. We look at the first mark, which is which is your gross profit. We know the formula for gross profit is revenue minus cost of sales, or that's what you should take knowledge you take into the exam. Substitute the figures: 52,000, which is our revenue, 23,250 is our cost of sales. You take them away and you get your gross profit of £29,060. We then move on to your total expenses. Your total expenses, you know, you just add them up, add all the expenses in the expenses up, to which you'll get an answer of 25,520. You know that net profit is gross profit minus expenses. We've got the gross profit of 29,060. We take away the total expenses, 25,520, which gives us our net profit of 3,540. So your answer is 3,540. Another 3 easy points if you know the formulas, which is why revision and knowing the formulas is really important. Okay, that's it, Year 11. I've gone through the different types of questions that you can answer and exam technique to answer those questions. What I've got for you now are the formulas you need to know. These formulas appear on this slide and the following slide. So if you just keep looking at this slide for a little bit, or you can keep coming back to it to make sure you know what the formulas are. And here's the second slide of formulas. Right, that's it. The list of topics are on Arbor. They've been on there since Easter. You can go to Arbor and have a look at them. There are more papers, past papers to do from Edexcel on the Edexcel website. You can use GCSE Bite Size to help you. They're always really good with the information. And above all, I hope you do some revision and good luck for tomorrow's exam.